Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the June 24th TPO Executive Board meeting. The first order of business is roll call and determination of a quorum, please.
Good morning. I will call the elected or appointed official's name, and if you're serving as a proxy, if you'll please respond with your name at that time. Mayor Tanya Martin.
Megan Brooks for Mayor Martin.
Mayor Tony Akins.
Amber Scott Kelso for Mayor Tony Akins.
Mayor Roland Bradshaw. Mayor Scott Burton.
Larry Gann for Scott Burton.
Mr. Troy Ebert.
Troy Ebert for Governor Bill Lee.
Mayor Terry Frank. Here. Mayor Warren Gooch.
Randy Heeman for Warren Gooch.
Mayor Jeff Harris. Mayor Glenn Jacobs.
Here.
Mayor India Kincannon. Here. Vice Mayor Lynn Fugit.
Debbie Helsley for Vice Mayor Fugit.
Mayor Ed Mitchell. Commissioner Gina Oster. Mr. Billy Pickle.
Present.
Trustee Justin Biggs. Mr. Isaac Thorne.
Suzanne Rimmer for Isaac Thorne.
Mayor Larry Waters.
James Temple for Mayor Waters.
Mayor Andy White. Mayor Ron Williams.
Mayor Ron Williams, present.
That's 13 present, sir. That's a quorum.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that needs to introduce themselves? Okay. Do we have anyone on Zoom today?
We have Anne Marie Anway with TDOT on Zoom.
Okay, thank you and welcome. Are there any amendments to the agenda? All right, seeing none, the agenda is set. We now need to approve the minutes, excuse me, from the May 27, 2026 meeting. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we have some presentations. The first is the I-40, I-75 corridor planning and environmental linkage study. This will be Doug, who's doing this one?
It's a combination. I'm not sure who's going to start. Okay.
All right, sounds good. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Good morning. Like that? Oh, you can hear me now. Okay. Good morning. My name is Amanda Snowden. I'm the Regional Director for the East Tennessee region for TDOT. We're here today to update you on our West Knoxville Corridor Pell Study. And first, I'd like to introduce some of our staff that will be here, hopefully answering some questions at the end of our presentation. Mr. Brad Thompson is with our consultant team with STV. We have Ms. Kristen Qualls as our project management director. Jason Schultz is our alternative delivery manager, and we'll be here to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. So, hey, two things we want to be here to tell you today. First, we want to give you the status of where we are with our Pell study, and also we want to inform you about upcoming public meetings. And you may say, a Pell, let's talk about what a Pell is. It's Planning and Environmental Linkage Study, and what this does, it's a federal highway initiative to accelerate project delivery by linking, just exactly what it says, the planning process and the environmental process. And a couple of things this does for us. It allows us to look at alternatives early and consider what those look like, as well as do public involvement. And that's exactly what we've done. In the fall, we had our first round of public meetings, and next week we'll be going for our second round of meetings on where we are with this. And you'll be seeing these alternatives. So we've also been having stakeholder meetings with some elected officials, and glad to present to this body as well, so you know going into the public meetings next week really what to expect. At this time, I would like to introduce Brad Thompson. He's going to come up and walk us through some additional slides, and we'll be glad to take questions from you all at the conclusion of his presentation.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate the opportunity to present this morning on the study and give you all an update on where things are at and as we go into the public meetings next week. A lot of slides, a lot of information. I'm going to get through it as quickly as I can. Just if you would, I think we'd like to see questions at the end, if that's okay with everybody here, so we can save those for then. So first thing is a study overview. Amanda already did a great job of kind of covering what the Pell is and what it means, and it's essentially exactly what she said. It's we're taking a holistic look at the corridor to determine kind of what some of the opportunities are to improve the corridor. We know we've got a lot of congestion and things there that I'll show you in just a second. The big thing is here it combines both the planning process and the environmental process, as well as the public stakeholder involvement process, all into one, so that things can move forward into the next phase of project development without any undue delays or anything like that. So one of the things I want to mention is we are looking at this from a statutory Pell approach, which basically means essentially everything we do here can roll right into the NEPA phase of the project. And that's part of the idea of speeding up the project development process, if you will. So the study area, you all have probably seen this before. Essentially, our study area looks at the 17 miles of the mainline corridor, being I-40 and I-75. But you can see our study area is much larger than that. And one of the reasons, as you'll see, is we're looking at the option of seeing if an I-75 bypass could be a potential solution here. So that's why the study area is much larger than just the I-40, I-75 corridor that you see up there. So a little bit about progress to date. We developed several documents that have been completed, framework and methodology, the purpose and need report. Actually just got word from FHWA last week. Everything's good to go on that. Alternative screening methodology, which is how we go about screening the alternatives we develop and figuring out which ones are the potential best solutions. So those are a few things that have been done to date. Right now in progress, we are literally in the process right now of screening all the alternatives and looking through those to determine the best options to move forward. And then we're also in the process of developing that alternatives evaluation report, which is a required document for the overall Pell study. The next steps, as Amanda said, we've got public meetings coming up next week that we'll talk about in just a few minutes, as well as a project prioritization and phasing report, which is essentially where we figure out, okay, here's the recommendations, how do we go about phasing those, and what type of environmental document is going to be required to make those happen. And then ultimately the final Pell study report. So I mentioned congestion earlier. I don't think it's any surprise here. When you look at congestion in the corridor, if you don't do anything to the corridor, it's going to be much worse than it is today. You can see there's a whole lot of red in this corridor, which indicates that's overcapacity. So that's what we're dealing with in this corridor, to try to figure out how can we potentially solve that, not just for today, but into the future as well. So the idea behind the study here, the whole purpose of the project is to, one, address congestion, two, figure out how to improve travel times in the corridor, and three, enhance the system modernization. So parts of this corridor, as you all know, who have been here for many years, know that there are parts of this corridor that really have had very little in terms of improvements over the years. A couple of interchanges on the west side really haven't been touched or really done anything new with those since they were built. So part of the idea here, the purpose of this, is not just addressing that congestion, improving travel time, but also how do we go about modernizing the system in the corridor as well. So last fall, we held a series of public meetings. We had 181 people attend in person. We had a survey online where we had about 3,700 people submit survey responses. Those survey included multiple questions and things related to the corridor and things we wanted to hear from people to understand people's concerns. Of that, we got nearly 35,000 responses all told from the survey themselves. We did get 39 official comments submitted, meaning people filled out a comment form or submitted an email to the project email address, and we had about 3,800 website views. So all in all, not bad in terms of getting information. Some of the themes we heard, probably no surprise to you all in this room, congestion, a lot of concerns about congestion, bottlenecks in the corridor, some of the ramp and merge locations being short, interchanges that are sometimes too close together were a concern to people. The need for infrastructure upgrades, adding lanes, figuring out how to redesign interchanges, again, modernizing that system, are all things we heard. We heard about the truck traffic and the way stations, which we're all familiar with as well. This corridor is extremely high in terms of truck traffic that it carries on a day-to-day basis. And then finally, we did hear a little bit from folks on the multimodal and transit options, with some interest in things like commuter rail, express buses, those types of things, park and ride facilities as well, were some of the themes we heard. So one of the big things I want you to take away is We do have our next round of public meetings next week, starting Monday. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, each of them from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. You don't have to be there right at 5 o'clock. If you can't get there till 6 o'clock, that's fine too. It's a come and go open house style format where you come in, look at a series of boards and things we'll have set up around the room and provide us with feedback. We'll also have a rolling video that talks you through the boards as well. So feel free to spread the news and help us get the word out about the meetings next week. So let's talk a little bit about the alternatives that we've been looking at. So the way we developed the alternatives, we looked at the existing conditions that are out there. We also looked at what's going to be happening in the future in terms of traffic projections and those types of things. We looked at the public and stakeholder input that we received from various meetings, including the public meetings. And we also looked at, there's no shortage of studies that have been done for this corridor and things that have been looked at over the years and recommendations that came out of that. So we took that in mind, along with the other items here, and developed a series of alternatives that we wanted to consider and look at and analyze. So the alternatives we considered are here on the left. We looked at general purpose lanes, which is basically adding or widening, more of a traditional widening approach. We looked at what's called a collector distributor network, choice lanes, the I-75 bypass I mentioned earlier, transportation system management and operations, what we're calling a targeted approach, and express bus. And don't worry, I'll go into each of these in just a second. So the interstate widening. So for most of the corridor, this looks at adding one general purpose lane in each direction, both eastbound and westbound. It does help us to modernize the existing interstate where there are concerns with short merge ramps and exit ramps. And it helps us to correct some of the design and operational deficiencies that are out there, really to help try to minimize those weave areas. Some of the benefits to this one, this particular alternative, it does add capacity. It does help improve travel times. It helps to modernize that infrastructure, like we said, and it also supports freight movement. Some of the challenges, as you might imagine, in this corridor that's heavily developed are right-of-way impacts. We also have environmental considerations, and you'll see some of these as recurring themes on a lot of these. The construction impacts, obviously you start widening the corridor, you're going to have substantial construction impacts as you go throughout, so it's imperative that we figure out a good way to do traffic control. And then finally, one of the biggest challenges on all of it, for most of these, with the exception of one potentially, is funding sources. We've got to figure out how we're going to pay for this. These projects are not going to be cheap, obviously, and funds are limited more so now than ever. The next one is what's called collector distributor roads. So collector distributor roads, if you've seen these more, you see a lot of them in Texas and some other areas, but essentially what that does is consolidate entrance and exit ramps so that you're getting off at one point on the interstate, traveling down through, and you're hitting multiple interchanges as opposed to trying to do that all from the main line of the interstate. So essentially, the collector distributor roads are separated from the interstate travel lanes by a barrier. You get into those, and then you get access to your interchanges. It does very much help separate the weave movements that are out there that are causing some issues that are caused by entering and exiting traffic on I-40. Some of the benefits, it does reduce the number of locations where weaving movement occurs. Challenges, it doesn't really do much, we found, in terms of congestion improvements. And also, you still have the same right-of-way impacts, the environmental considerations, and again, the funding sources that would need to be identified for something like this. Choice lanes. So for choice lanes, you're basically looking at adding 2 barrier-separated lanes in each direction, and while keeping the existing general purpose lanes that are out there open to all users. So nothing changes for the people that are out there using the lanes today. They can continue to use those lanes as they do today. This just adds 2 choice lanes in each direction where you have the choice to get on those lanes by paying a user fee, and it's based on dynamic pricing, which is based on congestion. So the higher the congestion, the more it theoretically costs to use those choice lanes and be guaranteed to go a certain speed. It gives motorists the choice of using the existing lanes. They also have the ability to use the choice lanes if they want. So some of the benefits to this is it does add capacity without removing existing lanes that are out there now. It does improve travel times. This one actually leverages the Transportation Modernization Act funding availability and enhances system modernization. As you might imagine, we're talking about the potential of adding 2 lanes in each direction here, so this does have greater right-of-way impacts than some of the others. We also run into some issues on the east side of the corridor with TPA transmission lines potentially, and also environmental considerations. But one of the benefits here is obviously you have the ability to leverage that TMA funding. So the concern for finding the funding is not quite as substantial as it is the others. Then we have the I-75 bypass. And I want to point out this map here. It may be a little bit hard to see here, but you can see the corridor kind of run to the north. Those of you who have been around here for many years are familiar with this corridor somewhat. We looked at just a broad area here of connecting from the I-40, I-75 system interchange up to I-75 north of town. This is not intended to be an alignment or anything like that. We've not identified anything like that. This is just a corridor that we use to be able to analyze traffic and how it would impact the I-40-75 main line. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we've looked at there. So for the bypass, it's a 25-mile relocation of I-75. It is a 4-lane roadway with center median, much like your interstates are today. It starts at that 40-75 interchange, as I mentioned, and ends at I-75 and near Raccoon Valley Road. It's 70-mile-per-hour design speed. Some of the benefits here is it does helps divert regional traffic and trucks. It helps to reduce some congestion. It improves the freight mobility and safety, and adds, obviously, additional regional mobility. Some of the challenges here: substantial right-of-way and community impacts. You have to buy a right-of-way for a 25-mile corridor through an area that could potentially have some challenges from the availability of that right-of-way. Environmental considerations. Major deal here, you're going on entirely new alignment, so there are major environmental considerations to consider as you're developing a corridor like that. This one does not really do anything to modernize the existing corridor, which is one of our purposes, and funding sources for this project would still need to be identified as well. Next is the Transportation Systems Management and Operations. I'll start out, it's a mouthful. There's a lot of words on the screen. One of the things I'll say right off is we initially looked at this as a kind of a primary alternative in hopes that this could maybe, help the corridor, maybe be a little bit lower cost solution. It doesn't really have the ability to do that. So what we're calling this is a complementary alternative, which basically means that these are things that could be added on to any other alternative on an as-needed basis. So things like looking at variable speed limits in the corridor, ramp metering. I'm sure you all have seen ramp metering in some places where they control it with signal control, how often you get on the interstates, weigh in motion, the increase of closed caption television and dynamic message signs for traffic and incident management. Looking at enhancing Kingston Pike with advanced technology and improved mobility. And then also looking at things like CAV, or connected automated vehicles, and vehicle-to-everything technology, which is essentially where you have communication devices that transmit road information in real time about the conditions, work zones, et cetera. Not all that different if you use Waze now. It's more of a social media-driven thing. But this is actually real data out in the field. But the big thing here is they also have the ability to transmit that information for things like signals, so that people understand when signals are about to turn green, when they're about to turn red, so that they know when to slow down and expect to stop or continue moving. Some of the benefits to some of these technology applications, it could help improve traffic without major construction. That's probably one of the biggest benefits, right? You have the potential to implement something like this quickly. It does have a big impact on incident management and safety in terms of response times. And the idea here, again, is this would support some of the other alternatives as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't really address the long-term capacity needs overall of the corridor. So it has kind of limited effectiveness as that standalone solution, as I mentioned earlier, and is most effective when it's combined with some of the others. And again, on this one, the funding sources would still need to be identified. So the targeted approach alternative, this one came about kind of a spinoff of the CD, the collector distributor road alternative. So the idea here was we would look at some very specific areas where we have high peaks or high traffic volumes, congestion issues, bottlenecks, and try to address those specifically. So it's intended to ease that traffic where congestion occurs the most. So these are what I would call spot improvements, and it includes things like on and off ramp improvements, using some collective distributor roads, as well as adding capacity for the I-640 interchange on the east side. Well, on the east side of the corridor, but where 640 meets I-40. Some of the benefits to the targeted approach, it is a lower cost approach. It's still not low cost by any means. It would have some expenses to it. It does have fewer right-of-way impacts because you're not doing anything for the entire corridor. It's in specific locations. Improves safety and congestion, helps to modernize the existing infrastructure that's out there. Some of the challenges, again, environmental, but the big one here is it's not really a comprehensive solution that improves congestion for the entire corridor. It takes a spot approach to it, spot look at it. And again, funding sources need to be identified for this one. Last one I'll mention is Express Bus. We looked at, something along the lines of providing limited stop bus service operating on I-40 and I-75, utilizing park and ride lots to get on and off, and basically use the existing roadway infrastructure that's out there now. Some of the benefits, it does expand travel choices for commuters, gives people another option with minimal roadway expansion, and it helps to connect regional employment centers. Challenge with this one is it doesn't really address congestion. It doesn't really address the long travel times and doesn't really do anything to modernize the system as a whole. So those are kind of a rundown of the alternatives. What we're doing now, we're literally in the process right now of screening those alternatives to figure out what the best potential solutions are. So essentially we take our universe of alternatives we have, we take those through a level 1 screening process to figure out if they have any fatal flaws. From there, we narrow that down into a series of alternatives that we look at a next level of screening that's far more detailed, more numerical in terms of the impacts that they have. And that would ultimately spit out kind of our recommendations, if you will. Once we have those, we move forward with the FHWA report, the Pell study report, and also our Pell to NEPA transition report. So that's kind of the alternative screening process and how that works. It takes into account things like, costs, improvements to traffic, improvements to travel time, all those things we say the purposes in enhancing and modernizing the system that's out there. All those purposes, we start looking at those things for each of those alternatives and see how they score to figure out what the best solutions are. So our next steps will be to continue screening those alternatives, come out with the preliminary recommended alternatives, have our public meetings, and then wrap this thing up in the fall of this year. So, sorry, I know all of y'all probably have some questions, so I will be quiet now and let you all fire away. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good presentation. Can you remind me of your name again?
Sorry, Brad Thompson.
Brad Thompson.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. First, I like the idea of, I understand the words, planning, environmental linkage, and the idea of doing both of those at the same time, but it's not in lieu of NEPA. Help me understand we have to do NEPA too?
Yes. Great question.
So what are we getting, what are we avoiding? How are we saving?
Essentially what we're doing is when you go to NEPA, you have to go through a whole process of exactly what we're doing now, screening alternatives, those types of things. So we're doing all of this in the planning phase. Typically, you would do a planning phase, and then you would do a NEPA phase. And we're still doing that, but we're combining a lot of things on the environmental front, the things that were the assumptions we're making here. So looking at environmental considerations, looking at the traffic and things, looking at the planning, all those issues. That now rolls straight into NEPA. We don't have to develop that all from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the NEPA powers
lot of
that
that's
be
already
will
done.
accept this as?
Yes, that's the idea.
Okay.
That's statutory Pell. Yes.
Okay.
But yes, we do still have to go through a NEPA process. It's just the idea is the NEPA process would be shortened because of the results of this study.
Okay. I was wondering also, there was one mention in there of, some of the improvements, the systems improvements would be like improving, modernizing Kingston Pike. I would also say Middlebrook Pike would be another one. I mean, these are two state routes that in Knoxville and Knox County, and I guess into Loudoun County, maybe, whatever. They affect our region, and we've been working, we would love TDOT's help to modernize our traffic signals and traffic flow. And because a lot of these solutions, whatever paths forward, and I think there'll be more than one, like, I think members of this board would agree, like, if this is gonna take 10 plus years to actually see any change, we need some relief now, in the next year or two to relieve congestion and improve safety. I mean, literally, people are getting hurt on this stretch of highway. And as much as we need these long-term solutions, I think we need a both-and approach, hopefully, because whatever these long-term solutions are, they're going to be a long time till actual, people in our community get the benefits from them. So I just wanted to say the city of Knoxville welcomes TDOT's support to modernize these state routes in the city limits. We have some projects in place, but they're just moving real slowly. So any help from TDOT to expedite our ATMS projects on Middlebrook Pike and Kingston Pike and Chapman, those would be great. I wanted to ask also, you mentioned multimodal, that some people had mentioned that, and yet on one of the, you did the cost benefits and the express bus, it says doesn't relieve congestion. How can you say that it doesn't relieve congestion when you, instead of 30 cars, you have 30 people on a bus? Like, one bus takes a lot less space than 30 cars. And I know people don't like buses. Yeah. And I know that take up, if you have one person on a bus, it doesn't relieve congestion. But if you have 30, that relieves congestion.
So one, they're looking at the whole corridor and how do we reduce congestion along the whole corridor. But we see your point to this. And one of the things that we've seen across
Can you remind us of your name, too?
Oh, Kristen Qualls. I'm Kristen Qualls with TDOT. One of the things that we've seen across many states and what we're seeing right now in Nashville is they're doing their choice lanes on I-24. That express bus option is a really good viable option. And this team has looked at where your current park and ride lots and facilities are and how an express bus also could work even in a choice lane. They're able to use that choice lane without any user fees. And so it really provides some reliability to a transportation system and a transit system that we currently don't have. And even in a general purpose lane, you're not given that free flow movement that a choice lane offers for that reliability and safety that really, I think we've heard from the transit community that they really are looking for. And so when we did look at the express bus, while it doesn't fix the overall 17 miles, I think much like we've seen that complementary solution that we're seeing with the TSMO strategies, as Brad was talking about, the technology aspect, we see that also in the express bus being a complementary option that we need to look at how we can use that along with some of these wider, longer corridor managed solutions that we're approaching now.
Well, I see your point, and as someone who uses transit from time to time, yeah, we all want to just be able to hop on and have priority access. But I think it's not really accurate to say that an express bus, even on general purpose lanes, doesn't relieve congestion. I mean, it just does. I mean, it's potentially 30 people, 30 fewer vehicles on the road. I mean, it's not an express lane, but anyhow, just my 2 cents.
I can add a little context to that too. So I'm Andrew Park with HNTB, working with TDOT as a program management consultant. When you're talking about the growth of this corridor and where Brad had the color-coded heat map there, how many buses would that take is something to consider. Yes, we're working towards those incremental improvements, meaning when we're screening these alternatives, it's very much not a black and white, okay, one of these alternatives is the only thing that's being considered. So like Kristen outlined, buses are a component of that, but that may come up short when you're looking at freight growth, everything else growth in the corridor for the full 17-mile stretch. There's more that we can do there, but it is definitely a component of what we're considering.
Okay. Well, I hope that the final report will address the idea that even incremental improvements in congestion are still improvements in congestion. I mean, it's just weird to say that it doesn't improve it, in my view. One other thing, there's some things that talk about cost, environmental impacts, community impacts. I didn't see anything, one of our big grants that we get for this region is CMAQ. And so I think that AQ stands for air quality, right? I can't remember what the CM stands for. What? Yeah. So, you know, I didn't see anything in there about like the cost of doing nothing on air quality. And also like when we talk about the bypass, 75, you know, like, you know, it's real easy to be like, well, let's just keep running everything through downtown Knoxville, you know, but, you know, we all breathe the same air. And like having stop and go traffic, aside from safety concerns, you know, when traffic is stopping and people are, congestion is bad for air quality, right? And I didn't see air quality mentioned in the report and maybe that's just under environmental.
It's one of the environmental considerations for sure. Now, as part of this phase of the process, we're not doing detailed air quality modeling that would have to be done. Any of these would have to go through the air quality modeling process to figure out what the impacts are as it relates to air quality. That's done as part of that NEPA phase that's coming up. We're not doing any air quality modeling as part of this, but it's certainly things that we have to take into consideration, environmental considerations as these move forward, for sure. By all means, you're exactly right. Car sitting still is not good for air quality, and that is recognized, and that is certainly something that the detailed modeling for that to determine exactly what those impacts would be will have to be done, for sure.
And one last question before I, you know, let my colleagues have their questions also. Rail was sort of mentioned by members of the public, but it doesn't seem like rail alternatives, like, you know, if we had a, you know, high-speed rail between Nashville and Knoxville, you know, or some, I mean, passenger rail, either regional or statewide, like, you know, we're the transportation, we're not the car planning organization, we're the transportation planning organization. So I just wonder if you considered that.
Yeah, so first of all, yes, if you have something like a regional rail system that goes from Nashville to Knoxville or Knoxville to Chattanooga, all things have been talked about for many years, right? As long as we've all been living here, that's been the case. That has the potential to have impacts on the corridor that, you know, that would have to be accounted for. Right now, there aren't any of those that are moving forward, particularly at this point. But that is certainly something that could change the way the corridor looks. But as of the time of doing this study, there's not anything like that that's really saying that can be funded and can actually be done as far as can be rail from Nashville to Knoxville.
The highway authorities and the federal government don't really talk to the railway authorities and the federal government. Is that sort of what we have two different processes and they don't coordinate? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm necessarily suggesting that. I just, for example, I know right now there's studies ongoing for the Atlanta to Chattanooga to Nashville.
I don't like that one.
Yeah,
that's not my priority. That's not our priority.
You're probably familiar with it though, right? Yeah. That came out from the FRA a couple of years ago. They're working through that process now. Obviously, that doesn't, like I said, doesn't affect Knoxville. So yes, there's coordination that occurs there. I'm just saying in this particular case, you know, there's nothing that's being discussed right now that we could count on in terms of addressing congestion in the future.
On that one, Mayor Kincannon, one thing that I've always been told by our rail folks is the plateau is such a steep slope. A direct line between here and Nashville is a challenge.
Aren't there freight lines doing it though already?
I think they're all running to Chattanooga and then back up. That's what they've continuously told me with that because of that.
Well, we used to have, you know.
Yeah,
we used to have
some logging
like,
and some other
it can
ones.
be done. It was done 100 years ago, so it seems like it could be done again. But
and then we get into the nice part about what we do is it's all public, and then of course working with rail, we're working with private companies, and they have to play ball with us too, and that does create a challenge for even freight, whether it's locally or across the state and internationally.
Hi, I'm Lindy Miller. I'm with HNTB as well. And so just to kind of hit on the note of the idea of any type of rail between here, Nashville, here, wherever that is outside of this specific study limits that were identified. So any public involvement or comments, that is your sentiment. During the comment period, please submit that. But did just want to note that it's outside of the specific study limits for this particular study right now. And then I think Andrew had a additional comment on air quality. Did you?
I think just going back to the air quality piece, what we're doing now for the Pell steps, and as Lindy outlined for the study area itself, we're really looking at a decision-making process and not necessarily taking what's being done now and then just going immediately fast track and missing some of those steps. Those steps will be done through NEPA appropriately at the right level of granularity is something to consider, meaning we're not necessarily looking at to the nth degree of, a partial, 10 seconds here or there on travel time change on these alternatives. It's more or less, okay, this alternative is, and you'll see that in the report as we're going through in those next steps, what works and what is just specifically, hey, this does not meet the purpose and need and does not meet what the BCA would be, so the benefit cost analysis. So air quality, some of those other things that do get into the NEPA phase, you want to do that fully. You don't necessarily want to go and be too early to that. It's definitely something that we're considering as part of the screening process. There's plenty of environmental evaluation that's going through in that spot. So maybe not giving you a number or a percentage of increase, but is it a major benefit, a partial benefit, neutral, or going in the other direction? That's what we're looking at from a grading scale currently, not necessarily, hey, the air quality is going to improve by 10%, parts per billion or whatever the case may be. So just to give some context on that, we're not at that very micro granular level.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Doug.
I just wanted to echo on the express route options. I know in some communities, when they're widening the interstate and they're redesigning the interchanges, they find land in that area so they can create park and ride lots. Would like that to still be, as a possibility. And then I'm also worried if we go with a really wide expansion of the interstate, how we might potentially cut our community in half, and we have, transit users, biking, pedestrian people, how they get over the larger gulf that we might be creating. We know someone who rides the Kingston Pike bus and lives in West Hills, and they got hit walking from Kingston Pike because you have frontage roads, on and off ramps. So it just gets really confusing for the pedestrian or biker crossing the interstate. So that's I know that's probably further on down the road when they get into design. And I just worry about the funding. Every one of them said, we got to find funding. I know we're very limited by the funds that we have in our state. And if we do fund this, then what's the ramifications? Does that push other projects in our region off? If we're like, hey, we want to fund these, but we only have X amount of dollars, what's the ripple effect of that decision? That's something we need to keep an eye on.
Doug, this is Kristen Qualls with TDOT again. We met with our legislative body earlier this week. We made sure to give them a briefing as well. And I think that's on the forefront of everybody's mind is how do we deliver these projects? One thing that we note is we have a 10-year fiscally constrained program, and we are still going to deliver our projects that are in that 10-year plan now. And so that also becomes a bigger conversation is how do we deliver when we already have the next 10 years already really road mapped out? So we see the need, and we've, obviously presented that to our policymakers too, for them to also look at that and make that a conversation. How do we fund transportation next?
Mayor Frank, go ahead. No. Go ahead, please.
Well, first of all, thank you. I think I've thanked you before, but this is definitely needed. And as someone who does travel to Nashville on occasion for different board meetings, we want to not be Nashville and get ahead of everything in terms of congestion and transportation. I have just a couple of questions. On the time frame, as you're screening these alternatives, are you looking at how quickly, obviously technology is one that could be done sooner rather than later, but for instance, if you're adding, whether it's choice lanes or just the additional open lanes, is that quicker than a bypass or I'm just kind of asking in terms of construction, right-of-way acquisition, all of that, is there one that is quicker than another?
Oh, is there one that's quicker than another?
Yes.
Well, the quickest one's going to be the one that can get the funding first.
Okay.
So, funding is key, as Kristen already mentioned. That's, I mean, I shouldn't say I say that flippantly, but it's just, that's obviously a major consideration here is how do we go about funding these improvements? As far as constructing them, one of the things I mentioned earlier, some of the challenges with these, obviously, anything you're doing in the main line, it's going to require a substantial traffic control process, right? Because you're disrupting people's everyday travel. And so anytime you're dealing with or construction on an existing road, obviously that's going to take a little longer than, say, if you were building a route in a greenfield, for example, where you don't have to worry about those things. But at the same time, there are other processes that can slow down, for example, the I-75 bypass. Environmental considerations and constraints are probably much greater there than they are for looking at the main line. So to answer your question, yes, those are things we consider in terms of trade-offs as we go through the screening process, for sure.
Okay. And then on the public meetings, I saw you put a slide up there that talked about the bypass, and you did mention one of the notes, the big challenge there could be, or one of the downsides is the community impact. And so, of course, that's going to be one of the areas where the community is going to want to see what that looks like. At the public meetings, will there be more detailed information? Do you have precise areas already picked out as part of that alternative? You just have the general concept?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
the idea here was we needed to, because this is not engineering, we're not engineering anything, right?
Gotcha,
Designing anything.
okay.
So we haven't set a specific alignment. We've looked at a kind of a broad corridor so that we can do things like traffic analysis, things like that, and say, okay, we know if we connect here to here and, points in between, what would traffic do in that case? So, but no, we do not have details in terms of design concepts, those types of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in your screening process, is it strictly about time travel, safety, and all of those things? I mean, I look at the 840 bypass, for instance. My husband's family's from down there. We used to travel on it. We would be one of the only cars on there. Now, it's massively traveled because of the growth, but it appears there's a lot of farmland that is still intact. There's maybe some industries there. But do you measure anything like economic development, preservation of land, any other factors other than just strictly the travel component?
Economic development, I wouldn't say is specifically addressed. What we do, we certainly consider more things than just traffic and travel time. It's traffic, it's congestion relief, it's travel time, it's the environmental factors, it's funding, it's cost, it's constructability. The ability to actually go in and build it, sometimes can be a challenge. All those things play into those factors. One of the things I would say as far as how we consider economic development is we do use the TPOe's travel demand model that has projected out economic or population and employment growth. So we use that. That helps us to drive the amount of traffic we're looking at into the future. So from that standpoint, we do consider that. But as far as like economic benefits in terms of promoting new development, those types of things, that's not specifically addressed in this because that's the intent here is how do we improve the congestion on the I-40, I-75 main line.
Thank you very much.
Andrew may want to add to that.
Just on the TPO point that you're asking for, the economic development and everything, when we're looking at the models, so building that out and just projecting traffic, there's a lot of different characteristics in some of those zones, if you will. Watt comes to mind, for example, that it's projected as a high growth area, just from what we've evaluated so far. I don't think that's news to anybody here on the panel, but just specifically, those components are tied into that. We are evaluating and also doing our due diligence on what's been identified for additional projects. Anything, not necessarily roadway, meaning, mixed use complex, anything of that would be of impact. Obviously, we're not looking at a new gas station or something on more of the micro level, but that definitely comes into play to make sure that we're right setting what the projected volumes are. Is it going to be perfect? Of course, there could be new developments and whatnot, but that does take a lot of the, it's a conservative approach to make sure that we're accounting for the growth in those different areas. If you look at the map, the green areas, as you would expect and as you outlined, have the highest possibility for growth. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be there, but that's where the modeling and everything else, ties that all together.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate this update. One of the things that Mayor Kincannon mentioned was Middlebrook, and they said Kingston Pike. I'd also like for you to look at North Shore. These corridors, I think, would be served better if we could get our traffic light system between Farragut, Knox County, and the city of Knoxville coordinated to where they talk to each other. Because you have a certain amount of traffic in the mornings and the afternoons that the traffic in our town, the traffic light system, by the adaptive approach that we're using, where we study what our travel amounts are at certain times of day, it allows us to program our lights to where we can do what I think all of us could do if we were all connected. And I wouldn't, you could really say connect on into both Anderson County and Loudoun County, but to where they would talk to each other. Right now, I've got cameras and I can look at what's going on. I've got a guy that's sitting in the war room and he actually moves things along as needed. And I think if we look at that, that would be a good short term. The other thing that concerns me is that what's not been mentioned is the flooding. I mean, this whole corridor, as far as from our town all the way into the Weisgarber area, all across that area floods. And I can show you videos of traffic backups from Level Road all the way past 321, all the way past Buttermilk, with just parking lots of cars and trucks just sitting there. I think this thing is something that we really do need to pay attention to, because the flooding is from the city of Knoxville all the way to Farragut, it's a big issue. And I can show you videos of a woman standing on top of a van underneath our exit. And the reason she was standing on top of that van, she was waiting to be rescued because there's water up to her door handles. Okay, and it's this kind of stuff is really what I think is a big concern with our residents. It's what I'm hearing anyway. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I actually have 2 points. You all probably have considered, maybe both, but certainly the first one. You look into like peak hour directional choice lanes, as far as, you see the roads that have X's and, the green arrows, depending on the traffic flow at that particular time of day.
Yeah, so where we are in the screening, to give some clarity, is you start with the full stretch of the corridor, and then as we screen the alternatives, some of those individual components of that, for what makes sense, obviously the dollar amount comes into play when we get to that point. That drives some of that, and then also myself, as I'm involved with a lot of the volume and the growth rate development and everything else. It has to make sense. So from that standpoint, this effort creates that flexibility. So it's most definitely not an all or nothing, meaning, okay, put it out there and feel like you're the only car on the highway. That's not where you're going with this, and that's not what the project and this purpose of the Pell study is intended to. So some of those alternatives and whatnot, next phase.
Thank you. And this is a little further off, but the Boring Company has a big presence in Nashville. Currently, they only do, they want to do a 1 mile pilot, different places. But looking forward, are there any conversations about incorporating them into this with our park and ride facilities?
Do you have any?
No, I don't think we can.
Yeah, I think to give some context on that, for where that is in Nashville and working through with the I-24 Choice Lanes corridor, that has a component and will carry some volume. But what you're talking about potentially, and we're projecting out to 2055, right? You want that long-term usability for the interstate system, and adding the technology components, also modernizing, like you're talking about with anything that's related to drainage and environmental. That's a very long list of the screening process that we're doing now. Something like that, if it's a single lane, think about what that is, and just you're not getting off, right? You're going from here to here. That has some carry to it, but capacity-wise and the choice to use that, specifically, we're looking at the origin destination across all of those different areas and then through the network too. So goes a little bit beyond that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything? All right. Appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
On to commuter trends in the Knoxville Combined Statistical Area. This will be presented by Emily Jackson from the TPOe staff. Emily?
Good morning. This presentation has a digital tool demonstration as part of it, so I'm going to get the laptop set up, and I'll start in just a moment.
Chairman, can we get this, whatever's going to be presented next, and the prior slides emailed to us?
Doug?
I've got to do a presentation on this.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doug.
All right, thank you for your patience. My name is Emily Jackson. I'm a research assistant on TPO staff. My primary topic I'm presenting to you today is the demonstration of the commuter trends digital tool. But first, I want to provide some background on commuter flow data in general and provide an update on some recent Census Bureau population data that came out last month. So we'll start with the population updates. As you are all probably aware, our region has experienced significant growth in recent years. The most recent data from the Census Bureau estimates that the population of the Knoxville Metropolitan Statistical Area, consisting of the counties you see on the map here, shaded green, to be 968,000 residents. Since 2020, the MSA has grown by over 60,000 people. This is like adding an entire extra Roane County to the population in 5 years. The average county growth rate was 6.8% for the area, but many counties saw growth well above that, such as Loudoun and Granger. The city of Knoxville surpassed 200,000 residents for the first time in its history, which is a significant milestone given previous decades' trend of stagnation and decline, and cements Knoxville's third place by population in the state, ahead of peer cities Chattanooga and Clarksville. Okay, now we'll get into some commuter flows. Our staff updates this graphic every year with the latest commuter data from the Census Bureau. Some of you have probably seen a version of it in the past, but I'll go over it, how to read it. Oh, by the way, this is it's a handout I provided in case it's difficult to see on the small screens up there. So the white arrows represent the number of commuters who both live and work in the same county. So if you look at Sevier County, for example, there are an estimated 25,000 individuals who both live and work in Sevier County. The blue arrows represent flows of commuters out of Knox County. So about 6,200 workers commute from Knox to Sevier County. The green arrows represent flows of commuters into Knox County. So about 9,000 workers commute from Sevier County to Knox County. On the flip side of that handout, or on the screen there, is a table that takes the idea from that map and expands it to include total flow data in and out of counties in the TPO planning area. For example, if you wanted to know the number of individuals who live in Sevier County and work in Loudoun County, we would identify the live in Sevier column and the work in Loudoun row, and see that an estimated 166 workers make that commute. The yellow highlight on the diagonal of this matrix emphasizes the workers who live and work in the same county. Sure. So the number of people who live in Knoxville, or live in Knox County, and work in Anderson County, you would look at the Knox column and the Anderson row.
So 18,694 people live in Knox County but commute to Anderson County.
Correct.
Okay. And then if I want to know how many Anderson County people work and commute to Knox County, as 12,500? No, 12,500. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
What do the totals mean?
The totals are the nationwide commuters into those counties. Yes. So
Sorry, the nationwide.
what does that mean?
the total number, so it includes
Global,
even,
like a global number.
yes, it could be from outside
Okay.
of,
Regional flow into that.
yes, not just regional, so it includes people, for example, who commute from Memphis or Atlanta.
So
And
the outside, I'm sorry,
Yes,
Sorry to interrupt. Outside is outside of the region.
correct. And then
Gotcha.
total is
Yeah,
everybody.
everybody, okay.
Yes.
Sorry, thank you.
So every day, 222,541 people commute in and out of Knox County?
Minus 142.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the number you're
That's
looking
the
at.
total.
Okay, total. Total
That's the total commuters, Mayor.
Okay.
This is the number of
who
people
commute,
in Knox County.
who, wait, I'm
That's the total residents of Knox County that live in Knox County
Yes.
that go out, that work somewhere.
Yes.
So a big bulk of those stay in Knox County. Of the 222,000 residents of Knox County, 142,000 of them stay in Knox County. Then you can see the rest of those, where they go.
The balance is about 80,000.
Yeah.
So of like the 500,000 people who live in Knox County, only 222.
Well, there's people the children and
Yeah.
and
Okay.
retirees.
So this is all
the-
journeys to work. It's not about journeys to school or the
Right.
doctor
This
or anything.
is-
It's just journey to work census information.
Yes.
work commute. Yeah.
Okay. It's really helpful.
Right. Labor force.
So we get all of this data from the Census Bureau commuter figures. They have a product called Loads. And they have a data tool that lets you explore highly granular data down to the block level. Like in this example of Knox County, where you can see the concentration of workers dispersed throughout the county. So the workplaces are scattered all throughout Knox County, as you can see by the light purple shading. We can quickly observe that workplaces tend to be located along major transportation corridors, such as I-40 and 75, Clinton Highway, and Kingston Pike. There's also a significant concentration around downtown Knoxville and UT campus. So all of this information we've looked at, the first commuter map, that matrix table, and the Census Bureau tool, they're all useful and informative, but we wanted to make our own commuter data tool that incorporates elements from all three of these things that we liked. We liked the simple, intuitive, geographic presentation of the commuter flow map. We liked the comprehensive county information that we had in that table, and we liked the potential for granularity offered by the Census Bureau's commuter data tool. Not only are these insights useful for planning transportation infrastructure and managing congestion, but they also highlight the economic interconnectedness of our region. So I will pull up the tool here, if you'll give me just a second. Do I drag it to the right? Yeah, okay. Okay. I know it's kind of small. I'll zoom in on things where appropriate so that we can all read. So front and center here, we have a map of the combined statistical area, which is defined for our region as the 13 counties you see shaded. The federal government, specifically the Office of Management and Budget, designates combined statistical areas as a means of grouping geographies together that demonstrate strong economic and social linkages with each other. So here, I'll zoom in on. So over here on the left, you can choose an origin geography. Right now it's on Anderson County, but you can pick any county in the combined statistical area. You can also pick select places, incorporated places, and unincorporated at the very bottom because it's alphabetical, unincorporated portions of counties as well. So if I just keep it on Anderson here, you can see we have some statistics regarding Anderson, but if I changed the geography, say to Blount County, all these numbers would update to reflect Blount County values. So that's kind of how this works. You pick a geography and look at the results. So back on Anderson, back to the map, we have yellow dots that you see pretty prominently. These represent all the places where Anderson County residents commute. Okay, so we have really bright spots in Anderson County, naturally. a lot of bright spots representing commuters that go to Knox County. Blount County has quite a few, with sort of fewer or less presence out east. Sorry if this is too small. Can everyone see okay? Okay. So the big green dots over each county represent how many commuters from Anderson County go to this destination county. So for example, if I click on this dot over Knox County, it'll pull up a value, 12,588 people commute from Anderson to Knox County. These green dots are scaled in size to represent the number of movements to each county, and they represent the sum of all the yellow dots you see. In case you find them distracting or you just want to look at yellow dots or green dots, you can turn them off if you just want to look at where people are going specifically, or you just want to look at county totals.
Emily, this also, just to clarify, this doesn't measure people coming to ball games or concerts, or it's just daily commuters to work.
Correct.
So, okay, I'm just thinking like the utilization of our transportation infrastructure. This is one significant part of it, but just not the only part.
Right, this is just commuter flows.
Okay.
Over here on the left, we have a pie chart. It looks pretty small right now, but I can expand it. If you click and drag this, you can kind of pull the window out. This chart shows the distribution of Anderson County distribution of industries where Anderson County residents are employed. So you can see there's a 14.5%, or about 5,100 people are employed in manufacturing, healthcare, social assistance. You can sort of see the breakdown of industries. I'll collapse that again. Over here on the right, we have a panel that kind of pulls out the big numbers. So we have 34,424 people who commute into Anderson County from other locations in the combined statistical area. And 16,942 people commute out of Anderson County. Down here, we have the number of people who both live and work in Anderson County. So it's 12,971. And this is these numbers here, the 43,301 total commute into Anderson County. That's the same number you'll find in this table on the back. So that's just the total. And then on the very bottom, yep. Sorry. What was the question? Okay, I'm sorry. I can explain it to you or anyone who has questions after. So just a little disclaimer, like all geodata sets, there are some challenges with these data. Not only are they just representing commuter flows, but in particular with this data set, there is a problem with headquartering. For example, with Anderson County, employees of ORNL have a work address at the ORNL main office in Anderson County, but it's very likely that many people actually report to work in Roane County. So there are things you need to be careful about. These are estimates, they're not perfect, but hopefully they provide a good sort of big picture idea of how commuters move about the region. Are there any questions?
Will you send us a link to this tool if you haven't already?
Yes.
And
we'll
also,
email
is the
it to you.
CSAs not the same counties as the TPO region?
That's correct. There are 9 TPO counties. All of them are in the combined, 6. I'm sorry, I was thinking the MSA. There are 6 TPO counties. All of them are in the combined statistical area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of numbers.
There's a lot of numbers. Yeah.
Thank you. That's actually could come in very useful as you said, on identifying trends. So are there any other questions, Mayor?
Well, Mayor, I just, an observation that these two reports remind us, even though we're the transportation planning organization, how we have policies and practices and incentives for land use affects the transportation. You know, people, these commutes represent people who, the distance they live from their jobs. And so to the extent that we promote housing near job centers, that reduces people's journey to work and I think improves quality of life because no one wants to spend a lot of time in the car, or at least I don't. But anyhow, congestion, this is obviously contributing to our congestion when people are going in and out every day for their jobs, and land use patterns and housing supply and location and walkability, all those things can have a positive impact on reducing congestion. So I know that's land use and transportation and housing are all very interconnected, and I just encourage us to keep that in mind when we're thinking about the bigger picture too.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Emily.
Thanks.
Good presentation. Now on to updates from TDOT and Federal Highway Administration.
I'll be very brief. I don't have a lot. I just wanted to make sure we introduced all our staff here and utilize them while they're here. Mayor Frank and I already started with Matt Hart. Matt's over here in the end. Matt is our new operations director for TDOT Region 1. So anything dealing with maintenance-related activities will be with him, so please hit him up if you have questions. Of course, Jason Schultz is here, and he's our PM project manager for this particular project, in addition to lots of other ones. Sitting behind him is Christy Brown. She is our pre-construction director. And then Andrew Rutherford, Drew, is sitting over here smiling at me. He is one of our great public information officers. So a lot of information comes out through him.
What was his name again?
Andrew Rutherford. He goes by Drew. I can get you all their phone numbers and contact information if you need to talk to any of these folks. That's not a problem. But I really appreciate y'all being here. I can't do my job without them because the updates you all ask for, I have to go to them, and I greatly appreciate that they're being here. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Matt Meservy is here as well at the end of the table. He is our director of planning, and he's been very involved with the PEL as well and keeping me updated and flowing information back and forth. So that is greatly appreciated. With that, I'll turn it over to Matt, or if you have anything else.
Thanks, Troy. One update that I have is regarding the status of the 26-29 STIP. We got word last week that Federal Highway folks have delayed the review of our revisions, and we expect to get something back by the end of July. So that's a little bit farther. Luckily, we have the old TIP and STIP just in case, but this was not the intent. I think we all understand that they have a heavy workload with the amount of responsibilities they've had to take on with some of the reductions. But that was what I wanted to present. It's coming, so close. That's it. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Anything else, TDOT? Nope. Federal Highway? Nothing. Okay, Doug, any other business?
We have on the list of the other business our July meetings. As of this moment, we're about 99% sure we're going to cancel July unless something comes in the next week. With the STIP being delayed, that probably reduces the chance of anything coming in that would be actionable. So we'll let you know for sure. We'll send out an official cancellation. And then there's still some information on the Bridge Investment Program for planning grants. The deadline is June 29th, so still a couple days to squeak that in if you're interested. And then we went ahead and listed the TDOT public meetings. We got we have some weird thing where if we put hyphens in our things, they convert to these U things, so sorry about that. It's a technological glitch, but the TPO will be out covering all the different meetings, and so but we hope to see y'all out there too in the public. That's all I have.
Thank you, Doug. Anybody else have anything? All right, at this point in the meeting, we will take members of the public may address the executive board with a 5-minute time limit for each person. Is there anyone here that'd like to do that? Seeing none, without objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.